and thank you so much for joining the WCA event, a new one, a great one. Gizmos Gadget 2021. We have it every year, since I think 5 years we do this, to introduce the latest and greatest invention and Gizmos gadgets of the Industrial IoT. This time we discuss what would be the perfect device. And since it's end of September, we will have it also under the title of Oktoberfest. This year, again, unfortunately, Oktoberfest at home. And this is what you missed in the last 2 years, unfortunately. So we had big Oktoberfest. You see on the left-hand side pretzels, we had beer. We had a guy, you may recognize this. He is not angry, he is just German, serving sausages. We had pretzel again. And we had our PhD also, Jeff Yen from ETI, who is inspecting the beer barrel. And it takes probably a PhD to open a beer barrel. I don't know exactly, but it was a lot of fun, but also was a good show at this time. Hopefully we can do this again. Here is who we are and what we do. So founded in 1994, the Wireless Communication Alliance is a non-profit business league dedicated to a collaboration in the wireless industry worldwide. That's the only good thing from the pandemic. We can reach the world and not only Silicon Valley. Our mission is to networking people. We have Ashish here, for example, from Singapore, so the other side of the world. Would not have possible if we would be only locally. By the way, welcome, Ashish. Here our biggest sponsors. Without sponsoring, it would not be possible that I would sit here and you would be here. We have our new sponsor, Ashish, sponsored some donation actually today, so we can get the next hurdle done here. Thank you very much again, TFI, TransferFi, to sponsor. Again, so like you said, we are on Zoom. It's not easy to survive and keep it going. We believe and we need you as sponsorship. So if you're an employee, a company, please consider to sponsor us. We have expenses. We have no income since 2 years. This Oktoberfest brought us always a couple of $100 and other events also. We don't have this anymore. If you're an employee, ask your company, hey, these guys are great. I learn a lot. And perhaps also your boss will spend some money like Google, Aspert, SensorWorks, CIG, and others. Briefly, upcoming event, we are having in October, end of October, Open Wi-Fi, the next Wi-Fi revolution. Big event, 3 hours with big company. Our flagship event in November, what's hot, what's not, where M&A and venture capitalist people talking about, hey, that was great in 2021, that's not that much, and that will be great in 2022. In December, shortly before Christmas, we will have a startup pitch, a global wireless startup pitch. If you know somebody internationally considered to be a startup, just mention this to us. Then we start again in 2022 with our annual Spectrum 5G event, followed by 6G spectrum of, actually should name here 95, not 85 gigahertz in the bus, sorry about this. And wireless power transfer and energy harvesting will be in March 2022. A little bit housekeeping. Please use Zoom question and answer section for the question or raise your hand. Presentation recordings will be available within 48 hours on our YouTube channel and of course on our website and LinkedIn. Again, greetings to the world and thanks for being our guest. We have participants here from Japan, from China, unfortunately this not time from Europe and from Singapore, of course. And again, to speak or sponsor, please contact us at sponsor@wca.org. And like every time, we have a raffle. So this year or this time, it will be a 1/4 yard of ale glass with a wooden stand. So you can ride your bike or your coach or your car open somewhere and you don't spill any beer. Without further ado, Jeremy, it's your time. Jeremy will get a short presentation about IoT sensors, so everybody understand what is an IIoT, industrial IoT sensor. It's not a garage door opener, it's something more dedicated. I stop sharing here, and Jeremy, it's your show now.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate the intro. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to just give a brief intro on understanding industrial IoT sensors from the perspective of ASBIL North America Research and Development, of which I'm the R&D and Innovation Director. So we compare the industrial IoT versus consumer IoT as industrial being an evolution, meaning that we're connecting between operational technology and information technologies and enabling intelligent industrial operations. So then we use advanced data analytics for transformational business outcomes. So basically, these developments are evolutionary versus revolutionary. The primary driver is data for industrial IoT versus things for IoT. And then connectivity is more structured versus ad hoc, which is important in the wireless side. And then it's certainly mission critical. The things that could be, the impact could be loss of money, loss of life, and other very important things. From consumer, it's important, but not necessarily critical. And then the solution ownership is generally more defined standards versus proprietary solutions. And the driving philosophy is productivity in machines and manufacturing versus human productivity. So a typical industrial IoT sensor company, such as ASBIL, who handles factory automation and building automation, is that we have sensors, we have flow meters, there's measurement devices, detection, all kinds of different things. But the evolutionary aspect of this is to create an overlay largely in wireless that provides a sense and communications edge node so we can collect data. Generally, there's an overlay because there's some paranoia about going fully wireless because of reliability and repeatability concerns. So we're getting people more and more interested in that and being able to do deterministic systems. But right now, we're sort of on the cusp of that. So the perfect industrial IoT sensor would be completely wireless once we get people, more familiar and comfortable with this. There's a wireless power component that cares about low power and continuous operation. There's a wireless communications component that is important to have low latency, reliable, with robust connection and highly secure. So the vision here is to do a combination sensor fusion device that would look a little bit like a Swiss Army knife, developing combinations of sensors that can handle real-time, non-invasive, low power, completely wireless, highly reliable, secure, with low latency and easy to install. And the measurement parameters analogy would be something like the blades on the Swiss Army knife with the same handle, and those would come together in a sensor fusion type paradigm. And the things that could be sensed would be examples like flow, pressure, temperature, chemical composition, leak and crack detection, and among other things. And then those can scale to add more and more measurements within the same system if it's architected correctly. This is another area where just showing some pictorial examples of those same things for advanced industrial IoT sensors. And then Peter mentioned having a raffle prize of a yard beer thing without the beer included, but imagine if we could do this for the raffle prize, the ultimate sensor and actuator solution, which we found at Amazon a while back for $10,000. So this is one killer sensor fusion Swiss Army knife device. So once again, I'm in charge of the Innovation Center for ASBIL North America Research and Development. This is my contact info, and I'll transition this back to Peter to intro the rest of the panel. Thanks for your time.
It happened to me. I was muted. I was talking here and I was muted. So it happened to everybody here in the chat this morning or this afternoon. Okay, thank you, Jeremy, again. Do we have an understanding about this IIoT sensor? No. Yeah, okay, here we are. So with this, let's really start it. I introduce you to the moderator, Prakash Sangram. He is a very well-known analyst, working as Tantra analyst. Then we have El Grossenbacher, a senior product marketing manager for IoT at Twilio. We have Dirk Seidel, another German buddy, by the way, business development manager with Renaissance Electronics. Then we have Singapore again, Ashish Mehta from TransferFi, a CEO. Last but not least, we have Andy Do, president of Sensor Works, and Andy is also board member of the WCA. Prakash, the show is yours. We will come back in about 80 minutes for the raffle. Probably Jeremy will do this, and have fun. 1000% at least.
All right. Thanks, Peter. Let me slides. Oh. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thanks, Peter, for the introduction. We indeed have an interesting subject at hand. And as Peter mentioned, the subject is interesting, but it would have been even more interesting if we are meeting in person with beer glasses and cans in our hands and talking about this, right? Hopefully next time or next year around this time, hopefully we can do that. So we have an interesting subject, and also have very interesting mix of panelists, of experts to discuss this with. The way we'll do is I'll give a quick introduction of myself and give my view on IIoT market and the market scoping and such, and hand it off to the other panelists who will introduce themselves, their companies briefly, of course, and then their opening statement, if you will, on their view of IoT market, sensors specifically, and the technologies that enable industrial IoT. And after that, we'll come back to the baton will come back to me. We'll do a detailed Q&A. I have a list of questions that I have selected myself that I'll ask the panelists to discuss. And as audience, feel free to post yours as well, as Peter mentioned in the Q&A part of the chat, the Zoom chat. I'll pick them, the relevant ones, when we speak of specific subject and so on. So please start thinking about your questions and keep typing them into the Q&A section. We'll throughout the event, we'll look at them and pick the relevant ones. All right, so let's get started. As Peter said, I am Prakash Sangam. I founded my industry analyst firm, Tantra Analyst, about 3 years ago. We are a boutique firm covering 5G, AI, IoT, and few other tech areas. Personally, before starting my own venture, I was in industry for more than 20 years in telecom industry. I worked for AT&T, Ericsson, and Qualcomm in that order. So, and I've been in wireless since 2G days. That kind of dates me along with my hair. And I write for Forbes, have my own section in RCR Wireless News. I host a podcast called Tantra's Mantra, where I give my own musings, as well as bring industry experts for interview on various subjects related to wireless industry and so on. And I'll have more details toward the end. You can check them out. Okay, so enough about me. Let's get started. So what is Industrial Internet of Things, or IIoT? I mean, everybody has their own definition. We got some of the information from Jeremy on how they differentiate between consumer IoT and industrial IoT. In my view, industrial IoT is basically, as the name suggests, connecting everything industrial, all the industrial devices to something. That could be cloud, that could be other industrial devices, that could be connecting to people, or connecting to control systems, and so on. It's basically connectivity is at the heart of industrial IoT. And not only just connecting, but connecting in the most cost-effective way and most performance optimized way, right? So that's what, in my view, industrial IoT is. And what is specific about industrial IoT is its extreme variability. And its variability is in many aspects in terms of value or cost of these devices, few cents, sensors of few cents to equipments worth millions of dollars. The variability is in terms of what kind of performance they need, whether it is extremely long battery life versus extreme high, bandwidth and so on. It could be in terms of extreme complexity versus very simple devices. It could be reliability as well. Some things which are mission critical need 6 nines of reliability versus sensors you have tons of them. They may not need that much of reliability and so on, right? So extreme variability is the name of the game when it comes to industrial IoT. And you indeed need, you have to address that not as one monolithic thing, but specifically looking at what the use cases are, what the segment that you're addressing, and developing solutions, including sensors to address those, right? And in terms of landscape and interest, there is huge amount of interest, mainly because it's multiple $1 trillion opportunity for next 5 to 10 years. Of course, there are many forecasts on this. I have a couple of them mentioned here. KPMG says for next since this was done in 2019, for next 6 years till 2025, they see value created in industrial IoT of $4.3 trillion, across the board. You can basically see all the industries out there. Similarly, IHS Markit did their own forecasting, and they pegged the value created, economic value created by industrial IoT in next 10 years to more than 13 trillions. Of course, and if you look at all the different segments there, each on their own are hundreds of billions of dollars worth of economic value being created. So obviously the interest is very high, and the ecosystem is very diverse and wide as well. So the key would be how, if you are a company getting into industrial IoT, it's basically identifying the right segments, the right product areas that you want to address and you want to offer, and that price, cost, and performance points, right? We will look into some of those questions and what works, what doesn't work, and so on, and how the experts of the panel see the industry moving forward from a business, technology, as well as market point of view. With that, let me hand it off to Elle from Philo. As I mentioned, Elle, as well as other panelists, one by one, they will introduce themselves, their company, and their opening statements, about the views of them and their company on the subject itself. Elle, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Prakash. You can go ahead and advance to the next slide. So what I'm going to share with you is a little bit about me, a little bit about where Twilio kind of fits in to this, and some 3 takeaways that I hope you'll all see when you throughout the conversation, and then certainly as we leave towards the end of the presentation and open discussion here. So on the next slide, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Elle. I'm a principal product marketer at Twilio. I focus on IoT. I've been at Twilio for almost 2 years now, but I've been an evangelist of IoT nearly my entire career. I've spent hundreds of hours with innovators learning how they build their end-to-end solutions and how they take those solutions to market, creating more value, not just for their own businesses, of course, but for the world. And it's conversations like today that get me really excited about IoT. One of the things that I've spent a long time doing is building out those go-to-market strategies with those companies. So hopefully I'll have something of value to say here, and just a few, logos at the bottom of places where I've gathered that experience in my career. So on the next slide, just want to share where Twilio fits into the IoT stack. So this is something that we've all seen a version of this before, right? If you've been in IoT, you're well aware of. There's lots of stacks out there. At the very bottom layer, there's your actual thing, whatever it is you want to connect to the internet. It could be a bicycle, it could be a wearable, it could be a sensor in a building, it could be a truck. But then above that, you'll have the device software and security layer. So that would be things like machine learning or edge computing at the edge, that ship to cloud, device security, things like that. Then the next layer up is the connectivity or connectivity management, whether you choose something like Wi-Fi or cellular or Bluetooth. Then above that, you'll have the device lifecycle management. So especially in an industrial IoT, you want those devices that are out in the wild to live as long as possible. So part of that is being able to do over-the-air updates to those devices and being able to manage that seamlessly and at scale. Then there's always some kind of IoT data platforms. I've seen AWS, Azure, Google Cloud being very common ones. And then the final top layer of a typical IoT stack, you'll have a vertical applications that would be like that end solution that you'd probably be building to actually take that intelligent data from the device and do something actionable and meaningful with it. And then some kind of end user interaction or engagement, right? The data is completely useless unless you do something with it. So maybe you're sending an email to a team member, a field technician or something to say that a data threshold had been met. So that's your traditional typical IoT stack. So all the areas in red here, that's where Twilio fits in. We have a cellular connectivity platform, a device builder platform, and then of course Twilio's traditional product portfolio of various communication tools and channels such as video, voice, email, messaging, SMS, etc. So it's a little bit about Twilio. And then my next slide is just a quick summary of the 3 takeaways that I think we'll start to uncover throughout our big Q&A discussion, which Prakash will lead with us. The first is that there's a massive opportunity in industrial IoT today. I'm sure you guys all picked up on Prakash's slides just now. Over the next 10 years, $13 trillion in economic value. That's quite a lot. But there's a piece of that available today due to decreased cost of hardware, all kinds of things has made it so much more feasible for organizations to invest in building industrial IoT deployments. Another reason why that's happening is because connectivity is no longer a bottleneck. So we're seeing that the advancements in cellular connectivity over the last several years has made it such that you can do so much more with industrial IoT. And in fact, something very interesting that I've seen as a trend across Twilio's industrial IoT customers is that their customers are preferring cellular solutions to say Wi-Fi, for example, due to the security advancements as well as scalability and ability to get to market so quickly. And hint, you don't need 5G to get a piece of that industrial IoT pie. And then finally, it's easier than ever to build and deploy industrial IoT solutions. And that's something that I'm very excited about. And I hope that throughout this conversation, if you're thinking about building an industrial IoT deployment, that you'll feel more empowered to do so with various developer first companies that are building those easy to deploy solutions for you to take advantage of. So that's it for me. I'll hand it back to Prakash.
Hey, Dirk.
Okay, yeah, let me just turn on my camera here.
Uh-huh.
All right. Okay, yes. Thank you everyone for joining. So a little bit, we go to the next slide. A little bit to myself. Right. Initially born and raised in Germany, but lived in the States for over 20 years. Right. During my career, I learned and I loved to work as a customer advocate analyst, and connect really business with technology. So I have a passion for both. I work in industry for over 20 years, mostly in the semiconductor industry. I had various engineering and marketing roles, and I have a deep expertise in system design. And currently I work for Renesas Electronics in the system and solution team. And that's something which Renesas newly founded around a year and a half ago, because they saw that customers don't just want to have products, right? They want to have solutions because they have a particular problem to solve. And I think there what you see in the IoT space, right, where you have sensors, MCUs, right, how we all tie that together. So go to the next slide. So if you look at Renesas relevance and in our view at IoT and particular industrial IoT, Renesas being the #1 microprocessor company in the world, right? So we initially started heavily into automotive, but there are some synergies we see in industrial IoT because everybody needs to have security and high reliability, right? So we kind of depict the IoT device market in kind of 3 different sectors. The first one, obviously, is sensors. There are endless type of sensors, and here I only list one of them where we play a major role, like indoor, outdoor, air quality sensor, CO2 sensor, gas sensor, blood oxygen level, respiratory rate, and air velocity, and so forth. So lots of different sensors, right? Then also another interesting piece, and that is often overlooked, is power, because every IoT needs to have some power to drive the sensor, to drive the MCUs, or also provide the connectivity. So there are various ways to provide power. Obviously, one of them is plug the cable into the wall, but there is also a huge trend of wireless power, and we probably hear more later on. And also battery-driven devices, right? And then also analog digital converter, as well as some LDO. So there is a huge segment of power, how power is being used in IoT devices. Then obviously, finally, right, every data which is being acquired by sensors, right, and powered by some power device needs to be processed and also transmitted. So MCU and connectivity is another huge area where we have a major foothold. And there are MCUs, BLE-enabled MCUs, there are Wi-Fi, there is LTE, so there are a variety of different connectivity forms, and obviously they play together very closely with the MCU. So we see a lot of Wi-Fi transmission devices which have integrated an MCU, where you can actually write your application and do some processing before you send off the data to the cloud. Go to the next one. So when we look at what are the kind of the design challenges, right? You have an IoT, industrial IoT designer, right? Obviously, there was lots of different sensors, lots of different MCUs, lots of different forms of wireless transmission forms, right? The designer all faces challenge. How should they solve these issues, right? Because there are so many new technologies. So they're really looking for effortless prototyping, because they get the task, hey, build me an IoT device, which takes, for example, the gas sensor, right? Does some pre-analytics and then puts it to the cloud. So hardware that is can be easily daisy chained together for fast prototyping is very important. But obviously, the hardware is only one piece of the equation, right? The same piece, there is the software libraries. There's a lot of software involved. Whenever we have an MCU and you transfer data, right, you have software, you have integrated development, and you need to have a seamless workflow, right? All this is actually there to have fast time to market, right? Because the design cycle is becoming shorter and shorter, right? If you look in the consumer space, usually design cycle is around 9 months, right? Industrial IoT, it was to be 2-3 years, right? Now it's becoming a year and a half or 2 years, right? So these engineers are really challenged to build a product relatively quickly. So for this, they need to have common hardware and software. They also need to do looking at doing limited modification when they go from a demo or proof of concept to a final product. Right? So they're using all these building blocks, right? Almost like Legos to put this together. So they need to have this modular development and extendable integrated hardware, which is also easy to scale, because sometimes you have a system which has only 2 sensors, and then the next thing you have a more complex system, right, which takes maybe 10 sensors. Right? So how do I reuse some of them what I have developed before, so I speed up on my fast time to market? And also, our view is to help customers to tap into an existing ecosystem. Obviously, there are Renaissance devices and boards, but there is also this huge third-party ecosystem of boards who provide certain modules, sensor modules, right, connectivity modules, and hundreds of complete boards are out there. So we tap into these ecosystem to just help designers to get to market faster. So with that, we recently announced Renaissance Quick Connect, which is really kind of a prototyping or development platform of a bunch of sensors, which can be easily connected together, very modular, and the connectivity modules, MCU modules, and when we developed a common framework, a software API or hardware accept framework, which really addresses all these 3 different needs you see on the left side. So effortless prototyping, fast time to market, and modular development concept. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Ashish.
Hey, Ashish, take it away.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this and also giving me the opportunity to speak as well and provide a quick overview of my perspective. My name is Ashish. I'm the CEO of Transify and a co-founder as well. What we do at Transify essentially is we create long-range, safe and efficient wireless power transfer technology. Our vision as a company is to provide access to power to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Now, I'm just talking about now wireless power in the context of IoT and why that's super important as we move along in the future. Next slide. When we saw like IoT and industrialization, we've also kind of tracked a lot of the changes behind each one. One thing that we have seen is power is pretty much the backbone for a lot of industrial revolutions. The first, steam engine; second, AC distribution; third, inverter controls. Now we are in the 4th industrial revolution, where we are basically turning this physical space into a whole digital economy. The reason why we're doing that is because to have autonomous systems, you need to be able to have a digital surrounding to be able to react towards and automate on. So that basically requires mass sensor deployments. And to get there, you can't rely on the current state of power, which is either cable or battery-based. Next slide. Next slide, please. So wireless power is what we have seen as a core solution moving forward to be able to scale our IoT solutions, make it really simple, easy to deploy, but also at the same time, provide robust real-time data, make it plug and play, super cost-effective, scalable is a huge thing as well. Where you want to be able to remove your cable infrastructure, not worry about maintenance in the future. You put your sensors on top of machines and automatically capture the data that you need and can visualize with as soon as possible. So at that data layer and data capturing layer, that's what we focus on, being able to really make it simple to just digitize any machine out there, any old machine, new machine, whatever it may be, and push it to a cloud system. So you can actually focus on analysis, focus on pretty much the economics behind IoT, because that's what really matters in the end of the day. The economics behind it, how you can actually see results and save cost, and also be able to make sure safety of your team and your industry is top notch. So the next slide, please. So in the end of the day, this is what matters. What matters is the the 6-bit losses, which basically falls under availability loss, performance loss, quality loss, and all this what needs to be measured super easily and within a very, very short amount of time. Trying to set these up taking a long time and a lot of downtime just to set up IoT sensors to measure these things is just a big loss itself. So I think the big thing really is being able to get there as soon as possible, make it simple and make it easy. And that's what we have been doing a lot as well. And we believe in down the road, it's all about just trying to get these losses. It's not that complex. It's actually quite simple. But in the end of the day, it's about being able to capture this information as quickly as possible, as simply as possible. Next slide, please. And it's really not that difficult, right? So in the end of the day, a lot of the customers that we have been talking to within industrial IoT, the needs for industrial IoT, initially we thought we've been really focusing on things like, being able to measure a bearing fault or some sort of shaft alignment issue, wobbling of different sort of doors. And what we realized in the end of the day, actually just people want to be able to, companies just want to be able to know, what, I want to know my machine utilization. How do I correlate that with employees and technicians? How do I understand differences between machine brands, differences in terms of types of machines, and how does it work with the workflow? And all this basic information is really actually quite tough to capture. At the moment, a lot of companies have just resorted to using iPads and devices, handheld devices, to kind of type it in as a technician every time they enter a machine. But why not automate this whole thing? And I think that's where IoT comes into play, is to really just make it seamless and capture data, all the things that you need for overall effectiveness, so overall operational effectiveness, to be able to capture that as soon as possible, seamlessly as possible, without having the technicians or employees being able to type that in themselves. So that's the aim in the end of the day, and that's what we are. We see where IoT is going towards, is not only making it simple to have sensors out there that's seamless and you don't have to worry about in the future, but also being able to capture data that's useful. Next slide, please. And then this is the type of data that you expect to see down the road. Being able to see whether machines are on, off, high RPM, if the door's been open, if there's something being fixed inside the machine itself, you're changing a drill bit, all that basic stuff, right? And all this should be captured automatically. You need to be able to not kind of go into a computer and be able to look at the FFTs and then design and kind of put those things in. It should be quite automated. So that's the thing which I think in the future in IoT is all about automated capturing of data and digitizing data easily. Next slide, please. And the way we see this moving forward is basically action-based configuration. When I say action-based configuration, basically it's just where you go to the machines itself, you go to your assets, switch it on, automatically the software would trigger an action. You can just type the action in, be able to then push that action towards a cloud service, and basically monitor it in the end. So the configuration systems don't have to be programmed, pre-programmed, or predefined. You just want to be able to do the actions, capture it using the core sensors. I think Jeremy mentioned you need to have these universal sensors in a way. So temperature, humidity, vibration, acoustic sensing, and also like a few other sensors. It allows you to be able to capture pretty much a signature of every action. And with that signature for the action itself, you can just configure pretty much any action per asset without the need of being able to go into the programming part. And that's super exciting. I think that's the future of IoT, is not just only in the wireless power, making it easy to deploy sensors, but also capture data and information that's useful and insightful down the road. Next slide, please. I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening in.
Thanks, Ashish. Andy, your turn now. Andy, are you there?
Yes, thank you. I'm here. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate my my colleagues setting up the conversation, and I will keep it short because I know the fun part is when Prakash can ask us all the wonderful things about industrial IoT. And in fact, I'm here sitting at the Sensor Expo, or Sensor Converge here. So I don't know if this is a first for WCA, but our company SensorWorks is exhibiting here, and I can tell you that we've had numerous visitors, some suppliers, some engineers, et cetera, looking how to really go to the next phase of digital transformation. And that mostly involves IoT, and a lot of it involves industrial IoT. And no matter how many sensors that our company will carry or support, there's always a person that says, do you have a sensor that does this? And so I want to kind of apologize for the background here. I do want to show what that kind of stack looks like in terms of putting together an IoT solution. So next slide, please. So this is kind of what our Elle had alluded to earlier, kind of this IoT stack, and I'm going to kind of mimic that as well. And it's at the edge of IoT really is the sensors. There's unlimited number of sensors out there, and I think one of the problems or one of the challenges of industrial IoT is that everybody, customers and partners want a sensor that has not yet been made or exists yet. So I think those are one of the challenges, but for the popular things like temperature, humidity, all that was very common. Once you get past from the physical to kind of the digital, then connectivity is certainly pick your poison. If you want BLE, LPWAN, Halo, whatever that flavor may be, that's the transport. And of course, you have the platform. Most everyone is choosing one of the top 5, 6 cloud providers, and putting that all together becomes kind of the industrial IoT solution. And as I mentioned, our company, we try our best to really bring the best of different types of sensors, but there's just never enough. So next slide, please. So here are some sensors that for our company at least come up time and time again. And we've worked with municipalities, we've worked with fleets, we've worked with commercial buildings, and all of these companies and municipalities, they want to have the easy button when it comes to IoT. And as many of you know, IoT takes a village, and in case of industrial IoT, it takes a factory. And in doing so, we really try to facilitate that. And what we're finding here at the Sensor Expo is that there are new emerging markets that want to tap into industrial IoT. So I think we have a lot of building to go through to get to a point where industrial IoT is ubiquitous as networking is ubiquitous today. And I want to show you kind of a fun slide that always gets a chuckle. Next slide, please. So here, this is an actual real world industrial IoT customer of ours. In fact, it's a customer city in Europe who had a problem where rodents were chewing up all the traffic light boxes, and it wreaked havoc, caused accidents, what have you. It was just a nightmare, and they wanted to be able to get notified when there was a rodent problem. They have a lot. I don't know if it's hundreds, but certainly it was painful enough for them to have a smart rodent trap. So the old joke, build a better mousetrap. Well, here it is, and this is a better mousetrap in the sense that it has wireless communications using a LoRa gateway, an LTE backhaul to a network provider, to a cloud platform, which is SensorWorks, and then of course going to your device of choice. So this is something fun where even the simplest thing, a mousetrap, can be improved in industrial IoT. So with that, I'll pass it back to Prakash. I think you're muted, Prakash. Prakash, can you hear me?
We can't hear you, Prakash.
Yeah, I think you're muted for the last 10 seconds. It looked funny.
Yeah, that's you're muted is the most frequent used sentence, right? In last 1.5 years or so. Okay, sorry, I was muted. So yeah, so thanks for all the great slides and interesting use cases like a mousetrap. So I've already seen that you guys have posted some of the questions, the audience. So we'll go to them quickly. Let's first start with some of the basic ones about the market, where we are today, and so on. Right. So okay, so what is the current status of industrial IoT? You guys think it is not even started, or it's in its infancy, or it's ready to take off, right? So give brief answers. Let's start with Andy and go the other direction as we did the presentations. First Andy, followed by Ashish, Dirk, El and Jeremy. Andy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think it's started, but it's not. It's basically only in first gear. I don't think it's gotten to the point where factories have really embraced industrial IoT. I mean, some of them haven't even embraced cloud yet, right? So I think it's going to take a really pain point for them to either make money or save money in order to really fully embrace industrial IoT.
Ashish?
I think in general, like the way I look into technology is always the adoption curve, from like early adopters to the majority. Now we are kind of going towards the majority. So we are optimizing for economics of IoT right now. So initially it's all about optimizing for technology, then it's optimizing for value. Now we're optimizing for the economics behind it, which is actually quite nice to be at, actually. So that's the turning point. And I think that would really help us hit the majority market for IoT and make it a normal thing.
Dirk?
I think we are at the beginning of IoT. If you look at the industrial IoT, if you look at the industrial market, relatively conservative market, right? A lot of focus on reliability and security, and these things are just getting answered in industrial IoT, right? How do I protect my data, because I don't want to upload it to the cloud, right? But it's the same thing. I don't only want to rely on my own network infrastructure, because if this one fails, right? Then it kind of defeats the purpose. So finding these kind of mix, and also there are a lot of different things what people measure. We have endless type of sensors. How do I tie this together and make business sense out of these data? I think that's one of the challenges where companies still try to figure that one out. So I think we see much more, right? There was a huge inroads with using AI at IoT devices, right? So the upcoming years will be very interesting to see what companies, industrial companies, do with that data.
El?
Yeah, I'm somewhere between Andy and what Ashish had to say. I think that from what I've seen with our customers, it really starts to get down to where the adoption has been on an industry by industry use case. So manufacturing, very slow, actually, pretty slow to adopt. But when you start looking at agriculture, I was in shock that the number of more industrial IoT type of use cases out there in agriculture, with skyrocketing usage, at least from our own customers, right? Transportation and logistics, same thing. Huge markets where our customers are seeing lots of success. Building automation, crazy success. So and what's really exciting about that is we're at the point similar to what Ashish had said, is that organizations are now optimizing for scale. So they've been able to prove that this solution works, IoT works. The ROI, the investment on the IoT solution is there. Now they're optimizing for scale and globalization.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I actually want to echo what El's saying about building automation. My company, Asbil, is one of the largest building automation providers in Asia. And we do a lot. We've been doing IoT or industrial IoT, maybe not calling it the same thing, for probably 50 years, doing energy optimization for HVAC systems. And we do monitoring, whether it's on premise or through one of the third-party cloud systems. So that's definitely a key successful component. The one thing that is maybe a little different is we're talking about adding a wireless component to the sensors, and there's a security aspect there. There's a reliability. Something like building automation where you're trying to optimize energy, maybe not so mission critical in a sense, because you don't have to have low latency. So you lose money if something goes wrong, you lose connectivity, but the latency the temperature doesn't change that quickly. But in the factory floor with robots, that's a pretty key thing where you got to worry about the reliability. So people are not so comfortable with removing wires. And I think one of the key areas that's been successful has been anomaly detection. whether it's been through acoustics or vibration sensing for things like motors. You can detect predictive maintenance prior to bringing the entire line down. And these are pretty well-known applications. But I think people have been doing that for a while. They just called it machine to machine.
Yeah.
Now it's IoT, industrial IoT, and we're going to add some different wireless component to it. So there's definitely a huge opportunity. I like agriculture as well. That's not something my company's that involved in, but I think, there's definitely opportunity to optimize things, and that's kind of the name of the game here.
Okay. So when you work with your customers, what is how are they looking at industrial IoT? Is it for cost savings, or is it for new uses, applications, generating new revenue, both, in between? Let's start with L and go around. Come back to Jeremy, then Dirk, and Ashish and Andy.
What we're seeing at Twilio is we have two types of customers. We have customers who are building an IoT solution that's part of a larger enterprise, and that's more for cost savings, operating efficiencies, things like that. Then we have another subset of IoT customers that are, their entire business is the IoT solution, and they're reselling it to retailers or OEMs, things like that, or smart building, not too dissimilar from what Jeremy is saying, but smart building solutions, building automation solutions, and they're reselling it to property managers or building owners who own multiple buildings all over, any kind of geographical region. And in that case, they're selling a service. So, and then again, what it gets back to is it gets to be pretty nuanced by industry in terms of, the goal. But at the end of the day, time to market and time to value are huge in IoT. And I think that's because all of us know, and probably many people listening in right now, one of the biggest barriers that industrial IoT has had to face is proving the value. No one could get any investment from management because they weren't able, or it was very hard, very challenging to get investment from management to build these IoT solutions. And we're seeing much less of that now in both cases, which is really exciting.
Right, Jeremy? Jeremy, you're on mute.
Prakash, could you repeat the question?
So the idea is, when you work with your customers, they're looking at IoT as a cost saving option, or is it for generating new use cases, more revenue, newer revenue and such?
Well, like I mentioned before, with the building automation component, there's different ways to do it, but largely it's a cost sharing, like an ESCO model, where you're sharing that cost with the building owner or the property manager, and then we share in the profit there. There's different models to do that, but that's like a new revenue stream, and you can do more optimization with more sensors on older buildings, and you can get involved in newer buildings. But I think it's well, I think my previous answer is probably what I wanted to say is the other key area for industrial IoT is the anomaly detection for predictive maintenance. There's definitely a savings there, but people don't always know how to quantify it. So, they have to bring a whole factory down on a scheduled based maintenance rather than planning for it. So, rather than have a catastrophe, you can actually do things in more of a graceful way, which, you can account for that, but that's a different way to think about it.
Okay, Derek?
I think it really depends on the industry. If you look at the industrial space on the factory, right, people like to limit their risks. They cannot afford to have the factory down, so they use sensor data to kind of use predictive maintenance, kind of make sense of the data on the factory to make sure that the factory runs smoothly and you have optimized processes. If you look at building automation, right, there's all about how do I optimize the building? How do I save cost? Like, if no person is in the room, right, I can shut down the light. Or if there is light from the outside, maybe I can dim the light, right? Or depending in HVAC system, for example, right? How do I direct my heat in the building or the cooling? So we see a lot of things there where it really becomes optimization and saving cost. Then on the other side, if I look in the medical space, there's about unlocking new value, new application. Right? So if I have, for example, a medical device which constantly monitors the vital sign of a person, of an elderly person, for example, I can feed it back to my doctor, right? And they can take action right away, right? So you kind of have a new service where you can provide new value to the individual who's using that.
Ashish?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of different layers in which when you look into IoT, right now, a lot of the transition is basically moving from wired to wireless. There's a lot of, I mean, there's fundamentals, right? Like things like reliability, quality, security, all these things need to kind of get past in the mindset first and being able to really prove to be able to even implement that, because wireless kind of brings you to a different level of IoT. And let me give you an example. We were just talking to this company in Indonesia that's focusing on clothing manufacturing. Now, clothing manufacturing and sewing machines, these have never even gone through the third industrial revolution at all. There's no automation whatsoever. It just has freaking sewing machines and people. There's no need to automate. But now they're looking into it and trying to optimize. So we went in there, they were requesting initially for asset monitoring, predictive maintenance for 1 or 2 machines. I think it was about 3 machines altogether, where they can save about, 10,000 or 80, I think about around $80,000 per year. It wasn't much for 3 machines to be able to just kind of predict faults, like if it's a bearing fault, gear fault, some weird vibration thing. And then somehow the conversation, can't remember how, but it went down to like, okay, fine, what else is there? And then like, and we just kind of pitched saying, hey, you know what about just monitoring on and off of your machines? You're like, oh, we have 6,000 machines for that. And that could save us about $300,000 a year. And like, wow, okay. So it's not about the complexity about it. It's not about the trying to save one machine in terms of predictive maintenance. I think what wireless IoT kind of provides is a scalability which no one really thought about. That scalability kind of changes a lot of what you can actually extract in terms of value. So it's not all about just 1 or 2 machines where you can do with wired and replacing it wireless. It's about now, hey, we have wireless. Let's just think differently. Let's look into at scale. And how does that affect your bottom line? And that's I think the transition point, both in the reliability and technology down to economics. So that's what I meant by optimizing for economics now.
Okay, perfect. Andy?
Yes, I was just thinking about the folks that I've talked to at the sensor show here in Germany. I think you'll like this one. Some of the visitors basically said, hey, do you have some sensors to help with my cannabis business? And it's kind of a yin or yang. So am I helping you so you can grow plants better, or am I helping you so you can make sure that they don't die? Right. So, and of course, with sensors comes wireless communications. They want to use short range, long range, medium range technology. So I really think, in the whole, I think as this early stage of industrial IoT, it's definitely, more leaning towards cost savings, but as efficiencies kind of go over that curve, then they'll see these efficiencies turns into profit, because what these companies want to do is they want to prevent profit leaks. Right. And by doing so, that if you have, the analytics down to the plant, to the soil, to, how much water you're using, that's where it gets really interesting. And once these plants start moving, being transported and so forth, then wireless technologies kind of kick in. So I think it's very, intertwined. But if you, put me in a corner, I would say cost savings is what people are thinking about today.
Okay, maybe it's a lot of times it's cost saving is how they start, and they realize that they can actually make more money, not just save costs, right? That has seen a few times happen as well. Okay, very well. Okay, so we'll get one more regular question that I have, and then we go to audience questions. So you brought about this connectivity, right? Connectivity is kind of scaling IoT to new scales, if you will. So there are tons of different wireless options now, right? And there is 4G, LTE-IoT, different flavors of LTE-IoT. There's LoRa, Sigfox, and Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and there are, a few proprietary options as well. So, and most of the guys who are coming from industrial IoT to, from the industrial space, not from telecom space, they don't know any of this, right? So how do we bridge that gap to for them to make a good decision on technology, which technology to go with? How you guys have seen that being played out, right, in your respective fields? Dirk, let's get started with you if you have any comments.
So what I'm seeing, really, people don't choose only one technology. They use a modular approach, right? If you look, for example, some of the metering companies, right? They use Wi-Fi, they would use power line communication, but there was also LTE. Having these flexibility, because you don't know what your networking infrastructure is, right? And you got to use your existing network infrastructure, which fits back into the bigger environment, right? Because so having these modular concepts, modular approach, I think is very important here.
Very well. Jeremy?
I agree with Dirk on this. It's very much an application and environment type of thing. Like our building automation stuff is using BACnet as a wired standard. They're looking at some other things in the future, but it really depends. I mean, do you have thick walls? Do you have, a need for something that's lower latency? So, we have been looking at any number of different things. So I'd say probably some of the others on the call are more versed to answer that specifically.
Sure, Andy?
Excuse me. When we recommend wireless technologies, of course, there's a huge spectrum, and we for the most part, we kind of look at it this triangle based on power, speed, and range, and in that triangle, and there's variance, and so you can get maybe 2 out of the 3, but hard to get all 3. And then of course there's am I going to have to set my own infrastructure at, like CBRS? Am I going to have a recurring revenue? A recurring cost. But I would say those 3 have really been the sticky points. There is no perfect wireless. If someone just right now, LoRaWAN is very hot right now because of the range, because of the low power. But what if you wanted to transfer some sort of low video quality of so forth? Well, LoRaWAN can't do that. It's just not built that way. Yeah. Cellular can do that, but of course it's not as power savings, and it has, so of course a cost to it, right? So there's now intermediary technologies called Halo 802.11ah, which can do a kilometer range. So there's, when you slice it A to B, someone's going to do A prime and B prime. So you'll have more and more of these technologies to fit these little niches.
And also, who makes a decision, right? It's the solution providers that recommend it. Obviously, the end users, the industries themselves, they don't know how to choose and what to choose, right? Ashish, your views on it?
Yeah, I've given up in trying to get people to understand wireless communication tech. So I just get them to choose, and I'll be flexible enough and provide that.
You'll be arms dealer, is it? The arms dealer, you choose what you want, I give it to you.
Yeah, there's so much out there. It's easy to implement. It's not really hard to just put in a BACnet or Modbus or LoRaWAN or whatever, right? So I think in the end of the day, I'll just get the customer to choose. And this is so much. There's so much. I think one thing that not everyone realizes is that in the end of the day, it really depends on how it's programmed and configured, right? So reliability is right. You can, even if you use Bluetooth for data communication, you can have packet loss recovery systems if you want to, and improve the quality. So there's a lot of third-party voices in the customer's point of view, where oh, Bluetooth or this is not really reliable, or that is much lower power. I'm like, no, how can NB-IoT be lower power when it's going to a satellite or going to a tower? So there's a lot of things in which there's a lot of like stuff out there that's not true or real as well. And so there's a lot of confusion behind communication, to be honest. I think if there's a way to kind of, provide a whole educational sort of 101 on communication and get everyone to understand what's happening and what's the realities behind it, it'd be fantastic. But I've kind of given up in that part. I just
Probably there is a business opportunity there, right?
It's
Elle, your views?
Yeah, my perspective aligns very well with Andy's on this one. Of course, I am a little biased because I'm more in the cellular space. So most of my data points are from talking to customers with cellular solutions. But similarly to what Dirk actually pointed out, we do have customers who have multiple types of connectivity protocols as part of their solution. So as an example, they might have a cellular connected hub that connects more locally via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to other devices and sensors nearby. But then that hub is connected via cellular. So that's one approach that I've seen, or one blueprint, if you will, that I've seen across many, many use cases, which I think is really interesting. I will add a comment on the cellular that I've also seen from multiple, at least of our Twilio customers, is that they found that it's easier for them to get to market faster with cellular because especially when you can, with MVNOs similar to Twilio or what Twilio offers, you can put one essentially global SIM card into have a single SKU of devices from a scalability manufacturing perspective. You can send those anywhere in the world and they're just going to work right out of the box. And similarly, their customers are more interested in adopting that technology if it's just easy to use, it works right away out of the box. And then second to that, more so when it comes to IT management and security, actually customers, the users of these IoT solutions, they'd rather not have the Wi-Fi on their networks. It's a burden for them to have to manage that from a security perspective, especially like Ashish, you talked a lot about scale and the number of the plethora of devices that'll be out there. What a headache for IT to have to manage all of those devices. But when it's over cellular, all of a sudden you're eliminating that burden. And now the IoT solution provider is carrying that burden, but that's part of what their whole business model is about.
And also depends on the value and the payload as well, right? If you're, for example, tracking $1 million device, it's worth to pay for all the airtime that you consume and so on. But if it is a small sensor sitting somewhere in Minnesota or somewhere in a field, then may not be okay. Okay, so let's look at some of the audience questions. This is, I think, to Dirk. How does Renesas turn their typical MCUs into blockchain-enabled modules to create blockchain IoT cellular modules with their module partnerships? Wow, quite a mouthful. If you'd like, I can read it again.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
So Renesas is a semiconductor company, right? We provide some software framework, but mostly on the low-level device drivers. We are not within the application space. However, if people want to do blockchain, we work together with partners, right? Because there are various partners who take IoTs, look from a different angle, right? There are IoT partners who specialize on vision processing because it may be an IoT connected camera who needs to see at night, or there may be people where they use AI. All right, before they send stuff to the cloud, they do AI pre-processing at the edge, and the same thing with blockchain, right? So that's usually what our customer or partner handles.
Okay, very well, thanks. So this is to Elle. How does Twilio take sensor data, accessing the cloud, and steering the data to also concurrently and directly across blockchain platforms to offer consensus of the data? That would be the integration of IoT with blockchain. All the key IoT companies are looking at this now. That's a question.
Yeah, I saw this question come in. Thanks, Carl, for the question. A very interesting question also. So Twilio is not really serving the blockchain, and kind of similar to Dirk. We're not really, we enable our customers and enable developers to get the data that they need for their solutions, for their applications. So our customers would be the ones who would be via APIs, taking that data and then building it into their solutions, into their platforms. I can say that one of our customers, they have an incredible vision that's similar to, I think, the concepts that you're getting at, to leverage data from IoT sensors, again, accessible via cellular through Twilio. And their vision is in the utility space to hone in on all of this data collected from all types of utility or energy, renewable energy sources, and to be able to let other developers build new applications on top of that. And then the hope is that they're able to build a way for co-op kind of and consumers to be able to participate in reselling their own data. Reselling their own utilities that they're generating through their solar systems, et cetera. So it's a pretty interesting vision. And I think this concept that you're getting at, Carl, is in its infancy with IoT, but it's likely coming in the coming years.
Okay, well. Next one is on security. Do sensors offer security? So I think it's a lot of questions. So the basic idea is security is so key, especially for industrial IoT, home IoT. I mean, people can be lax and such, but in industrial IoT, it's a basic need, right? So how, with plethora of sensors everywhere connecting to different kinds of networks and so on, how is security being addressed? Let's start with Jeremy this time.
Well, I mean, security, our company has been around for over 100 years. So a lot of the systems we have now are currently wired. So security hasn't been so much of a concern. Okay. We're actually researching a lot of new security stuff, which I can't really speak about openly here. But it suffices to say it's very much a concern. So I think Andy, I suspect, is working on this much more on a day-to-day basis in terms of practical standpoint.
Okay, let's go to Andy then. Andy?
Yeah, I look at anytime someone asks me about blockchain and wireless, and first thing that comes to mind is, I wonder if this person is thinking about helium, decentralized wireless mining, but being serious, the fact that blockchain is good enough for cryptocurrency is should that be the mechanism to use for wireless security? Maybe. There may be cases where maybe you don't want to have an open ledger on every transaction for, I can't think of it right now, but that there are cases where you want to have that truly private, network rather than the public ledger. In terms of security, I mean, I remember, when the 2G and even, the 1X RTT, people were saying back then that, you're sending stuff over cellular and someone could catch it and intercept it and do all sorts of bad things to it. And now cellular is pretty secure, just because, there's a lot of browser security and all this other thing where we do banking on, right? So I think things will get better, whether you're, doing even simple low data stuff like LoRaWAN. I think, it just takes time for people to really get into seeing where the holes are. It's not a perfect answer, but security is the Achilles heel of IoT, and that's something that you hear on the news. So and so hacked into the HVAC system. Then everybody tightens down, and how do we make that better? What do we need to do differently?
Ashish?
I mean, yeah, security there's so many solutions out there. It's unbelievable. I think in the end of the day, it's really dependent on the types of potential attacks or approaches companies would get from external access, and being able to fit security around that. but there are a lot of solutions, and there's no doubt about that. They're quite good. IEEE standard. I mean, all the way down to, I mean, there's multiple sort of aspects of cryptizing words and data. There's quite a lot of things. I think the big thing is really just being able to try it out, understanding a bit more about what sort of your loopholes are in your system, and being able to cover those. That's the main thing.
Okay. So yeah, that's good. Thanks. Dirk or Relay, do you have any comment or?
Yeah, so security, I think, is one of the biggest burden industrial companies need to overcome what they're concerned with adapting IoT. And that can be for multiple different things. Obviously, data transmission, right? But I think data transmission, that problem is mostly solved. We have wireless standards, right, or transmission standard, where you have security in the data transmission. Where they're more concerned is device or device security, right? Somebody hacks this equipment, changes the firmware or changes the sensor data because he has access to the MCU, for example, and then either steals the data, right, and makes some sense and get some insight into the factory, or falsifies the factory and brings down the factory. Imagine what a person can have a power if you can control a big car plant, for example, and all of a sudden the car manufacturer can't manufacture a car, right? If you can predict this, so there's a huge upside where people can make money out of it. So it's specifically device security and sensor security, a big deal in industrial IoT.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks. Al, do you have any comments? Or?
Yeah. I love this question because it's something that we heard from our customers as they are trying to build and scale devices. And it's something that we incorporated as part of our product that we recently launched it last year at our user conference. It's called Microvisor, essentially a set of software that lives on a hypervisor, but it offers lifetime of security updates. So you can send those security updates over the air through the lifetime of the device, and ensure that during the manufacturing process of that device as well, that it has like the latest security standards. And I think that's pretty critical. And one of the biggest problems that builders see as they're building out these, at least on the cellular side, or cellular or Wi-Fi enabled devices. So that's something that we have in pilot right now, and it's pretty exciting. Hopefully we'll have more product updates on that in the coming months.
Perfect. So let's do, I think, Raffle now. After that, I have one question for all of the panelists, and we can close after that. So Jeremy, Marcel, back to you guys.
Yeah, we got a lucky winner. Luke Wang, you're the lucky winner of the Ale Glass. If you can send your email details and your address, your shipping address to peter@wca.org, then Peter will take care of it.
That's a good way to give an action item who is not there on the meeting. Right?
Yeah, so that's good. Back to you, Prakash.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Marcel. So we have had a lot of good discussion. I'll ask one last question to all the panelists. Maybe we'll start the other direction now. Go from Andy, then I think Jeremy, since he has to leave quickly. Maybe we can start with Jeremy because he has to leave quickly. So we talked about the current status of industrial IoT today. If we are to meet at the same place physically, hopefully, in next 5 years, in 2026, what do you think will be the status of IIoT across the globe? Jeremy, let's start with you.
Well, I'm hoping that there'll be a lot more wireless connectivity for sure. I think the confidence will get stronger and stronger amongst the people in the industry, because they're relying on it for banking and other activities. Everyone's got a cell phone now, so as well as new standards coming out that can facilitate safety and security for things like robotics. So I would be very excited if everything was wirelessly powered, wirelessly connected, just like I mentioned in my prologue about the ultimate sensor. So that's what I'd like to see. So hopefully we can all get back together in person in 5 years or sooner and then we can
Hopefully soon.
discuss this. So I really appreciate everybody, all your inputs to the panel as well. So great.
Thanks, Jeremy. Let's go to Andy. You're on mute.
I told myself it wouldn't happen to me today, but there it did. Well, you know, I would love to see in 5 years where I get to walk into a supermarket and the supermarket catered towards me in terms of the technology. And I remember the first time I walked into a department store and the lights came on when I walked down the frozen food aisle. I thought, wow, that's high tech. About time. But I really think industry and retail can do so much more. I think they're a little bit afraid to do it, you know, and I think consumers inherently are lazy in nature, so they want to do something that is little hassle or no hassle in doing of this, but also getting something back, feedback as you have the shopping experience. So I'd love to see more IoT in retail.
All right, Ashish.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, 5 years for wireless, that's too long. I think next year we'll talk about it for sure. Yeah, I think
I hope so too. I hope so too.
Next year we'll talk about it again. But yeah, I mean that's I think I pretty much have the same sort of perspective as Jeremy. It's just that ideal system that's seamless, easy to implement. I think IoT needs to be frills-free, you know, in the future. You just kind of throw a bunch of sensors out there, automatically captures what you need, and then just move on to, you know, saving money, you know, and being able to just focus on the economics behind it. And that's I think that's the future. That's where the value is. Get the value as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Dirk.
Yeah, 5 years from now, so my guess, you probably see people developing systems which take action out of data acquired by IoT. So I would expect a huge influx of using AI, right? Having all these connected devices and making automatic decisions. Right now, it's very manual, right? People acquiring the data from sensors, then they analyze it, right? And then they take action. So probably more fully automated system, AI together with IoT.
Okay, very well. Elle, you get the final word.
Yeah, I love questions like this. And of course, I'm a starry-eyed dreamer. So I'm trying to like take my excitement down a notch. So I'm not too optimistic. But 5 years from now, there's 2 or 3 things that I think we'll see in IoT. I think one, 5G in its infancy today. I mean, come on, guys, it's hype for IoT right now. But 5 years from now, that's going to open so many doors. I mean, think about what 3G, 4G did with the creation of Uber and Lyft. Like that stuff didn't exist. I mean, barely. It was very glitchy. Whereas now, or 5 years from now, when 5G and these other cellular technologies are much stronger, I think we're going to see things like AR, VR mixed in with IoT. I mean, we've all probably seen prototypes of construction helmets that, and wearables on your head or face that are at least aimed at kind of this idea. But imagine if all of us could collaborate right now and like actually feel like we're in the same room just by putting on a headset and being able to see each other. So I think we'll see much stronger prototypes of that in the next 5 years. But then maybe on the more realistic side, I think we're going to see a lot more adoption of industrial IoT in governments. And it's going to be more realistic. We're going to see more things for like fire prevention, search and rescue, safety, that side of the world. I think we'll see a lot more of industrial IoT usage there.
Very well. I purposely did not bring AI and 5G into the discussion. I know those are big topics, but there's been so many discussions. I think we can have one discussion without using those buzzwords. So that's why I did not purposely bring it. Okay, I think that was a great discussion. Thank you very much for all the panelists for your insights. And thank you to WCA for giving me an opportunity to moderate this wonderful panel. I think, hopefully we'll meet in person in future events at WCA. But thank you very much. And guys, have a good day, night, or evening, depending on where you are. It was really nice. Thank you to all the audiences who joined in. And I think the video of this will be available soon. So are the presentations to you guys. Hope to see you again in WC's next event. Bye-bye.
All right.
All right,
Take care.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.